Today we're looking at how we shape light in the studio versus how light shapes us on our journeys. From the sacred rivers in the Himalayas to a fifth floor apartment in downtown Melbourne, we're delving into light and the difference between photographers who love to control it versus those who are guided by it. I have to admit I watch a lot of YouTube, and sometimes it really hits me just how hard some folks are working on their light to make a video. I mean really putting in the effort in ways I never have to consider for stills photography. I found myself pausing on one scene in a video by Jake Frew. He's used a smoke machine to fill the room with haze, then pumped maybe a 600-watt candle from outside the window to create a beam of light that cuts through the room. It's really beautiful stuff, and it transforms what would otherwise be a very conventional space. Then he did something similar for the next scene as well. And then the next. Now it's starting to feel a little bit contrived, and I'm paying more attention to the lighting setup than the story. That's the thing about artificial light. It is contrived. That's kind of the point of it. The challenge here is to hide your footprints. You're usually trying to make it look natural. It takes a lot of work to make it seem effortless. There are two challenges with artificial light: making it look natural and making it look good. Actually, I'll say there are three challenges, because the third is trying not to slide down the rabbit hole as you learn more and more about lighting techniques. It's a big topic to get your head around. Even though my wife and I have a tiny little studio space at home, we seem to have a lot of lighting gear anyway. That's probably my fault. Every time a new bit of lighting gear hits the market, I'm watching the YouTube reviews and trying to work out if I need that cube light, or maybe the tube light, or a dude light, or a strip light, or a wraparound. The key to studio lighting is diffusion. Make it soft. Great big soft boxes or reflectors that spread the light source, and usually pressed as close as possible to your subject. If we're filming an entire kitchen scene, then we need to bounce it around from a couple of angles. We flood the studio with very soft light, carefully matched to daylight color temperature. For the most part, we find a setup that works for us and we stick with it. We don't use a lot of natural light in the studio because light coming through the windows changes all the time. Intensity and contrast changes with cloudy versus full sun, but so does the color temperature. Light can bounce off the nearby buildings or trees and pick up a color cast. Natural light is always on the move. There's also a more fundamental difference between natural and artificial light that goes much deeper than the light itself. My style of photography is mostly about editorial and travel. I'm trying to capture the character of a place, so it's really important for me to work with the available light. Not to change it, but to be guided by it. It's not even a matter of accuracy. I'm not trying to be true to the location as such. In fact, I reject the very idea of documentary or neutrality where the camera is involved. Every photo is an expression of the photographer just as much as anything else. Everything we do with the camera is art. For me, natural light is a powerful tool to guide me, literally. When I walk the streets of a city, I try not to get distracted by colour or subjects. I'm looking mostly at the light. I'm looking for which way the sun flows down a narrow street, how light fills in the haze behind a street scene, the way foliage bursts into colour when it catches a little late afternoon sun. I look for shadows across a courtyard that dance with the architecture. I let the light guide me. When I find interesting light, then I look for subjects I can photograph with that light. Not the other way around. The light always comes first. Natural light in a location is fundamental to the character of a place. The light is how the character of a place is expressed. We have to remember that cameras don't see subjects, they see light. There are no people, no buildings, no rivers, no cars, no trees. To a camera, there is only light. My creative process begins with how light moves through a place. That's what draws me in. That's where I get excited. So when we talk about artificial light, the question isn't so much about what kind of lighting is better or how much to spend on gear. The question is, what kind of character do I want to bring into this location? And what version of the real world am I trying to copy here? Am I trying to replicate the late afternoon sunlight or a fresh morning in the mountains or soft gentle diffusion through a window? You need to know exactly where you want to be before you start constructing your lighting. In the studio, I love the simplicity of having a standard setup for our food photography. We have a recipe that works. Any time of day or night, we know we can generate the perfect conditions for shooting a scene and know that it will be what the client wants. You can see that natural light versus studio light are two completely divergent creative processes. One is to follow a path and see where it leads. The other is to select your destination and build a bridge to reach it. They're both creative, but they are speaking different languages. Later this year, I'll be working on a longer video that delves into specific lighting techniques, so please drop a comment below on what situations you'd like help with when it comes to studio or natural lighting. My greatest joy as a photographer, though, is when the light surprises me. In the early days of learning about photography, I was once told by a friend that you have to imagine the photo you want to capture before you hit the shutter. I understand why he said that, I really do, but most of the time, that is not what's happening. I walk into a scene and I pick an angle on the light and start looking for compositions and looking for where the light is doing something unexpected. I look for where the light is coming from, where it bounces off my subjects, and how both the subject and the light change when the two come together. I just love capturing an image that I didn't know existed. That is my favourite part of photography. Someone else once told me that photographers need to learn to shoot in any light. And that's a bit like saying we need to learn to take bad photos, not just good ones. Maybe he was hinting at something a little bit more nuanced. As photographers, we do need to look for all the opportunities that different kinds of light can offer us. I still think there's good light and bad light, but what you define as good or bad depends on your skills and expertise. Each time you learn how to find a little magic with a certain kind of light, you've broadened your horizons for what is good light, for what you regard as workable. With more experience, you simply have more tools to draw from. And as cameras get better and RAW files pack more dynamic range, the boundaries that constrain us get pushed back a little further too. So the more we expose ourselves to different ways to think about light, the more possibilities that open up for our creative process.